right, good morning, Algebra 1. Today I want you guys to be working on solving rational equation. And so what I'm going to do is on your homework for today, I'm going to show you how to do one problem from each row. So they get kind of progressively tougher as you work your way down the worksheet. So I'm going to do A1, B1, C1, and D1. And then for your homework, I'd like you to pick 2 additional problems to do from each row. Okay, so you'll do 2 of these ones, 2 of these ones, and 2 of these ones. So you'll do 8 problems total for your homework. So let's do the first problem together. 3x over 5 plus 3 equals 7. And I would like for you to do all of your problems on a separate sheet, and then you can just transfer your answers onto the worksheet. Okay, there's not enough room at all in these little boxes. Okay. So with a equation that involves a fraction, if you can, you want to isolate that fraction. So in this case, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides and get 3x over 5 equals 4. And then we want to clear that fraction. So our denominator is 5. The value that would clear that fraction is 5. Pretty easy, right? We've done this before. So multiply both sides by 5 over 1. That's using the multiplication property of equality. And on the left-hand side, the factor of 5 in the numerator and the factor of 5 in the denominator can cancel. So we're left with 3x equals 4 times 5 is 20. And then divide by 3, x equals 20/3. So there's our first problem. Pretty easy. Okay. A1. Okay. Now let's try B1. Okay, next level up. So for B1, we have x plus 4 over 2 equals x plus 10 over 3. There are 2 ways to do this problem. And they both get to the same answer, obviously. But the first is to think about this as a proportion. So a proportion is a comparison of 2 fractions. So we have the ratio x plus 4 compares to 2 the same way that x plus 10 compares to 3. And so we've solved proportions before, and I know you solved them in algebra or in 8th grade before. But this is where you would cross multiply. So we're going to multiply 3 times x plus 4 equals 2 times x plus 10. So we're taking this denominator times this numerator equals this denominator times this numerator. From here you distribute 3x plus 12 equals 2x plus 20. And then pretty easy from here, subtract 2x from both sides. So x plus 12 equals 20, and then subtract 12, x equals 8. Okay. Now there's another way that you could have thought about this problem. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. And the other way is maybe you didn't see it as a comparison of 2 fractions. Maybe you wanted to instead just clear the fractions. So you want to think of what's a number that both 2 and 3 are factors of. What you're essentially finding is the least common denominator. So if 2 and 3 were your denominators and you were trying to find the least common denominator, it would be 6. So multiply both sides by that LCD. Multiply both sides by 6 over 1. Okay. So simplifying, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 3 times x plus 4, and then on this side 6 divided by 3 is 2 times the numerator x plus 10. You see how it gets you the exact same thing, so same steps, you'd get x equals 8. So it's just a little bit process. Instead of cross multiplying, you would be clearing the fractions right away by multiplying by the LCD. Okay, so now let's try C1. C1 is x minus 1 over 2 plus 2x plus 3 over 4 equals 1. Okay. This is not a proportion. because it is not set up as a fraction equaling a fraction. So we cannot cross multiply here because there's not a fraction equaling a fraction. So this is where you have to use the idea of clearing the fraction. Okay? If 2 and 4 are your denominators, we need to multiply both sides of the equation by a number that would clear the denominator. Okay, in this case, what's the number that both 2 and 4 go into is 4. So we're going to multiply the left-hand side by 4 and multiply the right-hand side by 4. Okay. I like to put over 1, that way it reminds me that it's really a fraction times a fraction. Okay, so I'm taking 4 over 1 times this x minus 1 over 2, and then plus 4 over 1 times 2x plus 3 over 4, and then it equals 4. So what I did was take the monomial of 4, and I'm distributing, or I'm multiplying it by the two different terms here. Okay, and then on the right hand side, 1 times 4 was 4. Okay, what can I simplify? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, so I can say 2 times the quantity x minus 1, and then plus, on this one, 4 divided by 4 is 1, so it's just going to be 2x plus 3 equals 4. Okay, I've cleared the fraction by multiplying by the LCD. I can distribute the 2, and then combine like terms. 2x plus 2x is 4x, and then negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Subtract 1, 4x equals 3, divide by 4, x equals 3/4. So the idea is when you have a rational equation with different denominators, you multiply by both sides by something that will clear the denominators. Okay, you're clearing the fractions. All right, our last problem is D1. So for D1, it's 6 over x minus 2 minus 6 over x plus 1 equals 1. All right. So in this case, we have a denominator of x minus 2. That's its own factor. Okay, so you're going to put parentheses around it because we cannot factor it any further. The same thing for x plus 1. It cannot factor any further, so it's its own factor. Okay. What would be the common denominator of x minus 2 and x plus 1? Okay, in this case, it would be those two factors, right? X minus 2 and x plus 1. So we're going to multiply both sides by those two factors, x minus 2 and x plus 1. And then x minus 2 and x plus 1. Okay. So it's really the same thing that we did here. We recognize what's the common thing, and now we're going to multiply both sides by that amount. Okay. What would we do next? We distributed, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is take that x minus 2, x plus 1 over 1 and multiply it by 6 over x minus 2. And we're going to come back and simplify that. Minus x minus 2, x plus 1 over 1 times 6 over x plus 1, and then equals, well here, anything times 1 is 1, and anything divided by 1 is itself. So it's just going to be this x minus 2, x plus 1. Okay. What can we start simplifying? Okay, with this first part, we have a fraction multiplied by a fraction. So we can cancel any common factors in the numerator and denominator. We have that factor of x minus 2 that can cancel. With the second fraction here, or second term, we have a fraction multiplied by a fraction. So the factor of x plus 1 can reduce. So what does that get us? With this first part, we have 6 times x plus 1. And then over here, we're going to have a minus 6 times x minus 2, and it equals x minus 2 times x plus 1. Okay, we've cleared the fractions. Now it's just a matter of distributing, getting rid of all those parentheses. So 6x plus 6 minus 6x plus 12 equals, how do we multiply binomials is we FOIL. So x squared minus 2x plus 1x minus 2. Okay, now we're going to combine some like terms. On the left-hand side, 6x and negative 6x cancel. So we have 18 equals x squared minus x minus 2. Alright, so we have a quadratic. Solving a quadratic, we get everything on one side. Subtracting 18, we get negative 2 minus 18 is minus 20. And we can use the zero product property here to factor. Okay, what's a factor pair of negative 20 that adds to negative 1? Would be negative 5 and positive 4. So either x minus 5 has to equal 0 or x plus 4 has to equal 0. So we get x equals 5 or x equals negative 4. Okay. The problems that are in the final row, in row D, should have two solutions. Okay, when you're setting these up and solving, you should get to a point where you're going to get a quadratic. So just a heads up on that. Okay, so once again, your homework is, I've shown you how to do A1 through D1. I want you to pick 2 from this row, pick 2 from this row, pick 2 from this row, and pick 2 from this row. Good luck.